Hey, it's another dishwashing rant. After I fill the sink. Alrighty, dishwashing rant in progress. I want to teach you guys a little something. Now, I'm going to set up the teaching with some side teaching. Main teaching is how they're going about changing our culture to suit corporate needs. But in order for you to understand it, I have to teach you a bit about human beings. Because I don't know who you are that's watching or what you know. So please don't think that I'm talking down to you. I'm talking to you, but I'm also talking to a whole lot of other people, I hope. And I cannot assume that they understand human nature very well, or that they understand the things I'm going to teach. So, the first thing I'm going to teach is human creativity. As you know, there's a whole lot going on these days about copyright. How, I invented this, it's mine, I should make all the money off of it. And I know you're going to do all of the building and making, and I'll cut you a percentage, but I should make all the money off it. It's mine, I invented it. I overheard someone talking the other day about how China's a bunch of cheats and thieves. They steal our ideas and turn them into stuff and market it back to us and sell it back to us, and we should be building it and making it. That's a different rant. But human creativity doesn't work that way. Humans are not creative in a void. We create off of each other. So if Jane down the block invents a new texture in red, then a whole lot of people suddenly get the idea, hey, I'm going to play with textures, or I'm going to play with reds, or I'm going to play with this new texture in different colors, or I'm going to play with this new red in different textures. So they're inspired by each other. And then Jane sees a brand new take on her work and goes, oh, I'd like to see that in metallic. And another art form is born. And so when there's nothing around us that's creative, we lack ideas. It becomes extremely rare for people to have new ideas in a void. Some people will. They'll get ideas out of the blue and they'll start these things. But human beings in general inspire each other, copy each other. It's the reason why when you look at a crowd of people, you'll find that they all dress kind of more or less alike with variations on a theme. That's what humans are. We're a combination of independence and groupthink. We like to be in groups. We like to identify ourselves as part of a group. And we're inspired by each other. So, that being said, the corporations come along and they want, during the Industrial Revolution, it was the corporations' big heyday. There were pretty much no laws on how you treated people. I mean, lords had been treating vassals like vassals, and, it was still slavery in the world. Nobody really thought twice about it. They thought, God stuck you where you are, and if your life is a sufferance, that's because God thinks you deserve to suffer. And we don't know what's going on, but it must be something in your head. And to be fair, the church brought that crap into our world. So the corporations, they had no restrictions. They could hire children. You could go down to the local orphanage where someone had, where some children whose parents had died were sitting, and you could go buy some kids, and you could do anything you wanted to them. You could just flat out murder them, generally speaking. And if you were discreet enough, nothing ever came of it. And there's plenty of situations where that's exactly what happened. And worse yet, these children were horribly abused. Everything you've ever heard in the news about what's been done to kids was done to kids, and there was no recourse. There was no legal recourse. It had to be pretty severe, and you had to pretty much be a constant serial killer for anyone to take any notice or try to take any action. So factory bosses pretty much could do as they wanted. They could make people work for a pittance, and so some woman might work. She spends her entire life standing. They weren't allowed to sit. Standing in your factory floor, making lace which you then sold to somebody else for 5 times what it cost you in material and labor. and you pocketed the profit. And that suited these people very well. And as with, if you have too much prey, you'll get a lot more predators. Such happened. We wound up with a lot more profiteers. It was rewarding for people to be profiteers, to put profit ahead of people. And so an entire culture of profiteering and some very large dynastic families wound up getting fatter off of this couple hundred years period in which people, and they started rearranging government to suit them. Now, at the time, ordinary people couldn't vote. You had to own property. You had to have a home with land under it and that you owned, not rented. And that was extremely unusual for people to own their own property. I've got brushes behind the camera is what I'm doing right now. Oh wait, that's not the right brush anyway. And so there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity for the people who were being abused to seek redress from their government. Their government wasn't on their side. Then they started fighting for the vote and for workers' rights. They started getting together as groups and having general organized strikes and riots and demonstrations. And they really scared the rich people. Because, when you get up in the morning and your mansion is surrounded by torches and angry people, and they really, really do plan to come in, kick you from your bed and give you a hard time, and you know that that's what you did to them last month, that you went in and kicked them from their bed because they refused to work, and you were trying to break the union, and you owned their cottage, so you just evicted everybody, lock, stock, and barrel, did, sick babies and all. Pregnant women were hauled out of their bed during labor and dumped at the side of the road with their bed as part of how the landlords were trying to force people back to work when people were striking. So, anyways, the people won. They won control of their government, and they won control of their work environment. They won concessions. They won better wages. They won better working hours. And it was a long, long fight, and it continued, and it really reached its peak in the beginning of the 20th century when the most power ever was given to the common working person, aka the proletariat. And I don't like that language because it's been demonized, but anyway. Corporations lost a lot of control and a lot of profit, and I think that the stock market crash of 1929 was kind of a reflection of that there wasn't nearly as much money floating around to cushion a whole lot of fattened cattle. And it was engineered, though, of course. It was engineered. It was engineered to get rid of some of the dross, the surplus wealthy population, and redistribute the wealth a little bit so that the people who are really wealthy could get back in tune with their bank accounts. So, since about the Industrial Revolution, said really wealthy people have been tossing around ways to bring the population under control, to be unassailable in their fortresses. And what's more, there's a certain mental illness among the very wealthy. One of the terms we use is sociopathic. They don't have a connection to the people they're using. They don't have a sense of reality where the people they're using are actually, that you actually have to worry about it. Somehow in the back of their minds they think that the people's suffering is, it's like an abusive man says about his woman, oh, you're sitting there crying your eyes out as if something's wrong. Don't I feed you? Don't I bring my money home and spend it on you? You're just power tripping. You're just overreacting. That's a sociopathic reaction. Meanwhile, she's holding a broken arm. And he's like, oh, come on, that arm ain't broken. You're faking. So that's how these wealthy people think of the common man. That mostly there's two kinds of people in the world. Real people and animals that you get to use and abuse. And they're so dramatic. They overreact to everything. You know what I mean? You know, it's so hard to find good help these days. So they're looking for a way to control the population. Now, what they've been doing, they figured it out. You see, if you read, I'm getting all tangled up because I've got so many things I want to teach at once, and I want to teach it all in a short spell, and I'm too stupid to put together a script or write it out first. So they've started with our media, okay? Long about when broadcast TV showed up, they started to figure it out. Holy moly. Now we can reach directly into the minds of the people. All of them, all at once. We don't have to try and get them to pick up a book and read it. They're actually sharing the media with each other. All we have to do is change the stories they're watching. They don't read books, and they cannot watch the stories if we don't put them on, because they didn't have streaming, they didn't have on demand, they didn't have recordings. If you wanted to be entertained, you turned on the television and you got what the broadcasters decided to offer you. And the same happened with music. You turned on the radio and you listened to what the radio was offering you. And the radio might be offering you a variety of somethings, but all of it was being controlled by large corporations already. Now, we started out with a lot of independent things, but it didn't take them long to bring all the independents under their sway and then change the laws so that independents weren't even allowed. You had to have... They raised the bar on what was required for you to broadcast to such a degree that you had to have a lot of money to get away to do it. You had to cooperate with the wealthy people if you wanted to deliver anything to the people. Whether you were printing a book, or you were writing a song, or even painting a painting, whatever creative endeavor you wanted had to go through somebody wealthy, a corporation, a publishing house, a broadcasting network, a radio network. It had to go through someone. And now they had control of our creative media. If you were creating something that suited the agenda, then you got picked up and promoted and paid. If you were creating something that went against the agenda, then nobody supported you, and you were just lost in your own little corner of the world, heard only by your villagers, and without a sufficient time to properly produce, because you also had to go to work to pay your rent, to pay your bills, and to feed yourself. So they had you cornered. They promoted those who suited the agenda, and they ignored those who didn't. Now here's the part where human creativity comes in. Let's say that you have decided to tell people not to trust their democratic government. Because what's a democracy? A democracy is a government by the people, for the people, right? You elect people from among you to take charge. Now, why do we need leaders? That was one of the things I wanted to point out. We need leaders because we argue so much. And by hiring a leader, we've got someone who can finally shut down the argument and start the action. He says, okay, I've heard you all. I've heard Mr. Smith's objections. I've heard Mr. Jones's objections. And I've heard Mrs. Smith's concerns, or Mrs. Adams's concerns. And we are going to do this. And he puts the plan together with his selection of people and hands it back to the people. Okay, you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're going to do the other thing, and thus is a great temple built, or a statue, or a monument, or city roads are built. Thus is human society organized. That's how democracy works. You tell the leader what you want. Everybody tells the leader what they want, and then the leader figures out how to give as many of them as possible what they want. That's the idea behind it. That doesn't suit the corporates, because the corporates are a minority and they won't get what they want, ever, unless they shut people up and get in between the people and their government. So one of the ways that you weaken that democratic government is to make people distrust it. Make people fight it, distrust it, and go against it by nature. You know that person in the room who's always coming up with an argument? You're like, I think flowers smell nice. And you go, oh, not daisies. Daisies stink. Have you ever smelled a daisy? And he'll go on for 5 minutes about how stinky daisies are and what kind of flies they attract. And then he'll tell you all about other, like the amanita that stinks of, the corpse flower, and he'll just go on and on. Well, they started encouraging that kind of person and making it seem normal by supporting artwork especially in movies, novels, and music, supporting the art that promoted that sort of personality, the revolutionary hero. You have seen so many movies about the revolutionary hero. I know you have. From cowboy movies where he goes in and he gets it done when everybody else is wringing their hands and getting shot, to Star Trek where they take down the entire damn galaxy by being anti-government and revolutionary, by being argumentative, by fighting the tide. They don't talk about whether or not that government is democratic. They always tell you it's not. And you'd think, since the corporations run the government, that this would actually go against them. But it doesn't, you see. Because they're still dealing with a democratic government, with democratically elected representatives. So they're still dealing with a population who still have tools in hand to control their government. Pardon me while I remove some of my layers. It's getting warm in here. So there are tools that you have in your arsenal as a citizen to communicate with your government, to ask what you want, and to convince them that they really ought to do what you want, especially since everybody else in the country agrees. And, you know, petitions, for instance, we know about petitions. They're a really nice one. Writing letters to government, calls, getting together with placards and signs and rioting. There's all kinds of ways that people have that they make their government mind. But we don't do it. And when you ask someone, why don't you do this? Why don't you go and vote, for instance? Why don't you actually vote? They say, because it's pointless. They're not listening to me. I don't trust them. Not one of the ones that I can vote for is real. If I vote for the one honest guy I've met, he's not going to get in. It's not worth my trouble, and I don't want to register, and I don't trust them, and I don't want them to have my information. And you can't even say what it is you're afraid they're going to do to you that you're not trusting them about. You know, some people do. They're like, oh, there's these camps, these concentration camps they're going to throw us in. If they find out that I'm not towing the corporate line, they're going to throw me in a concentration camp. That's what the corporations want, you see. You're not watching your government. You're not paying attention. And in the event that you do accidentally start to pay attention, they've got something sensational to distract you. In Canada, one of the most favorite sensationalized activities they had to distract us was they would stir up the Quebec population for separatism. It's like, oh, they're starting to notice that the Free Trade Act is going to ruin Canadian jobs and devastate the Canadian environment and cause higher taxes and lower services, while the profiteers suck money and resources out of Canada. So let's go plant a few people in Quebec to start stirring up Quebec separatism, and then we'll point all of our news media at the issue of Quebec separatism. We'll run around asking people what they think of separatism, and are they afraid that Canada's going to separate? And within a day, no one's going to notice that we just put the Free Trade Act through, and it screws you all. That's how they do it. And so when you make a movie that's really successful, and a series of movies that are really successful about brash, lone wolf people who go their own way and don't cooperate with anybody and are heroized for it, not demonized, they're not like, oh, that jerk, he just doesn't care what anyone else wants or thinks, he just goes and does what he wants, and damn the consequences, and the whole city got blown up. No. He's the hero who saved the day from some threat that nobody else even bothered to notice. That's what they're teaching us. That kind of person isn't a self-centered, egotistical jerk. No, he's a hero with better vision, and he's a visionary hero with, he's smarter, faster, better, stronger. He's got our best interests in heart. That's what they're teaching. And people who don't get along with other people, go along with other people, or consider other people are actually good heroic types. Well, after, spending your entire childhood growing up heroizing these kind of people, you are going to start, if you're a creative type, you're going to start creating more stories of the same genre. And it's going to be successful for you, you know, because you're going to get wealthy and famous, and you're going to get lots of ego strokes and lots of rewards. And so there's no reason you wouldn't continue to produce more stories about these people that the corporation want everybody to think are good. That's how the corporations do it. A culmination of distracting news. And yes, I do think 9/11 was created. I think that they knew damn well that these guys had a plan to fly planes into buildings and went, haha, let's take advantage of it. Let's see how far they get. I don't think they knew how far it was going to go, but I think that they shot a missile at the Pentagon in the middle of it all in order to get rid of some of the honest people who were working in those offices and were perhaps getting a little too close to some truths that didn't want to get out. I think the plane crash in the east was also one of the missiles or something like. The two planes that hit the Trade Center, I think they were definitely run by terrorists who could have been stopped well in advance of all this. There was plenty of information, plenty of proof out there that these guys were planning this. There was no reason that the government couldn't have stopped them, except they chose not to because it suited the corporate agenda, and the corporations have such deep roots in government control now that they're getting away with pretty much anything. And now with the internet, they're able to grab people directly and target. See, because if you don't like Alex Jones, you won't watch Alex Jones. And if you don't watch Alex Jones, you won't notice what he's doing, and you won't oppose it in any way. And you won't stop him you won't stop your husband from watching Alex Jones because, you know, he's got a right to watch what he wants. And he wants to watch it because he's the one Alex Jones wants to talk to. He's the one who's susceptible to the particular message that particular pundit has to offer. And if you're not susceptible to it, they will find some other message. You maybe perhaps are susceptible to more liberal-minded notions, and so they've got The View for you, where they're going to distract you. They're going to sit there and talk about the stuff that bothers you and do their whining and complaining without ever getting to a point of teaching you anything you can do about it. Just let you get your complaints out, and then they're going to distract you with the latest hot buys and hot fashions. Right in the middle of it all, they're going to grab your attention away from important issues and distract you with shallow, capitalistic, corporate, consumer distractions, you know. Oh, yeah, isn't it terrible what he said? Oh, isn't it terrible what he did? Now look at my shoes. Don't you want these shoes? They're only $500. And if you really can't afford $500, you can afford these $150 knockoffs, can't you? And so, bam, you got to go to work. Your bills are up to here, and you don't have time for all that. You've got to go to work and earn your pay. So you've been neutralized. You might care a whole lot about what he's been up to and what she's doing, but you don't have the time or the energy to do a thing about it, and you don't know what to do about it. And that's how they're doing it. They've got us by the short and curlies these days. And this YouTube demonetization is an aspect of that. By demonetizing a video like this, they are failing to support me so that I, with any luck, because I'm a housewife, I don't have to go to work today, so I still have time to make this video. But the idea is that I cannot afford the computer, I cannot afford the camera, I cannot afford to have a voice because I'm not getting supported, because my voice isn't saying what the corporations want it to say. And in fact, I'm saying things against the corporations. But because I only have 4 or 5 views, I'm still safe. If I had 100,000 followers, you may be sure that I'd be getting reports and blocks and videos yanked all over the place, where I'd have to spend inordinate amounts of time disputing the complaints in order to get my videos posted back up. And by then my views would go down. They would be killing my channel through a variety of means of discrediting me and shutting me up. Not because I was saying something wrong socially, not because I was dangerous to your children's welfare or teaching them language they shouldn't know or showing them things that ruin their innocence, but because I am ruining your innocence and your ignorance, because I'm actually calling the lie. I'm the kid shouting, the emperor has no clothes. Do you know about that one, the emperor's clothes? Where a charlatan convinced the emperor that the best clothes in the land were invisible, and went through a whole nonsense thing about invisible clothes, and the emperor, being too concerned about people's opinions, never called the lie. And his servants, being too concerned about his opinions, never called the lie. And the population, too concerned about the emperor's punishments, never called the lie. And so the emperor was running around naked, spending a fortune on no clothes, until one day a child in the audience shouted out, "The emperor has no clothes." And now everybody had to admit that, in fact, they were either fooled into thinking that invisible clothes existed, or complicit in the lie that the emperor had clothes. And that's the case. You are either ignorant of what the corporations are doing, or complicit. And either state is a state of shame. To admit that you're ignorant, especially these days, we've been taught that ignorance is shameful. It's a way of trying to force you to be less ignorant, but ignorance shouldn't be shameful. Ignorance should be something we remedy, not something that we shame and humiliate and cause to grow. Again, I'd say that's something that the profiteers have planted. Teaching us to be ashamed when we don't know something prevents us from reaching out and learning it. And with Google, all of a sudden, ignorant people had the means to learn without admitting to anybody that they didn't know. And so, with AdSense and AdAware and cookie tracking and all this other stuff, they're managing to distract us. So you go searching for say some socialist information. You know, you want a definition of a socialist term, maybe something as simple as that. But all over your search results are a whole bunch of stuff that's more interesting to you. Very good possibility that you're going to get distracted and never get around to actually learning what you set out to learn, because ignorance is power for those who are not ignorant. Your ignorance empowers the controllers, the puppeteers. So by making media that inspires more media and supporting artists who make the right media, they are teaching us the values they want us to have, and they are skewing our culture. They are disempowering us. They are destroying our connections to each other. They are destroying our trust in our own government. They are destroying our cultural connections. They are actually destroying our cultural traditions and turning them all into something you have to buy. I heard it once, I once read, and I've forgotten where I read it, but capitalism is a method by which profiteers take away all of our means of caring for and supporting each other and then sell it back to us at a price. So, for instance, something as simple as witch hazel distillate, a liquid you could buy in the drugstore in the first aid aisle, which cures an enormous array of skin problems. Nobody knows about it. It's in every drugstore in the land, and yet no one knows about it. They're buying corporate solutions that are branded and copyrighted and patented. So you're buying polysporin, I think people are using. And these things work a fraction as well as the witch hazel, but they make a lot more money. You see, they make more profit, so they want you using Clearasil, not witch hazel, because Clearasil is extremely profitable. Witch hazel is not. It's simply supporting some farmers and a distillery or three. It's not supporting a large mega corporation. And that's what I wanted to say about the owners of these mega corporations. To them, this life is a monopoly game. They have no worries. They can eat what they want to eat when they want to eat it. And if they get fat, they've got an army of people to help them work out, and a wonderful range of opportunities for exercise, like hiking in a tropical mountain, or skiing down the Rockies. And they can do it one day after the next. Today they can hike a tropical volcano. Tomorrow they can ski the Rockies. The next day they can go diving off the coast of Costa Rica. They have all those options. There's nothing they want for except mental stimulation. And for them, that's this giant game of Monopoly in which you and I are pawns. We are simply numbers in the tally. They are playing a game of who's up first, who's got more. And it's all about what their numbers are. So when you see the Fortune 500, that's, who's the richest man in the world. That's the game. That's what they're playing with our lives for. That is what is so bloody important that millions of us are getting sick and dying and suffering so they can get wealthy. That's how the game is working. What can you do about it? Human creativity, my friend. Be more creative. Think about it. And do a little more learning, a little more studying. Find out what controls your government has that allow you to communicate with it and tell it what you want. And tell your government what you want. You may not get it, but don't stop talking. Don't stop telling them. Don't stop trying. Because it does. Nothing changes like from here to here. Never works that way. Society, history, the world does not change that way. It doesn't go here to here. Although the weather lately has been doing that. What it does is it goes like this. So slowly, like a plant growing, that you may not even see the change. But don't stop thinking that that fertilizer you're putting on it, that is to say your communication to those in power, has no effect. It's just too subtle. Trust. Do. It's all you have. If you see another option, pursue it. But don't let them fool you into thinking that being a lone wolf independent, that being all by yourself, that by not tolerating anything from anybody else is somehow strengthening you. Those are the things that weaken you. Be tolerant. Be passionate. Be active. Act locally. Think globally. You've heard these words. You know them. Don't be so despairing. Just do. Really. You're going to die anyway. Make an effort. There are kids out there that need a better world.